Watercress. How comes the spell tome? Watercress asked after Basil sought advice on a patient who had developed frostbite. Faster now. I've been trying to read while sleeping, as you suggested, and it worked one of the nights. Otherwise, I'm just reading during the day when I have spare time, but I'm making good progress doing that. Excellent to hear. I'm also learning a tome. You are? Yes. I bought one in Trelia to create a small barrier of good weather. I doubt it will be large enough to protect the entirety of both armies, but perhaps I will alternate who the barrier protects or adapt it with sorcery. It is a different realm of science than I am accustomed to, so it is taking longer for me to learn the spell, but once I finish, I intend to rewrite it in such a way that it will protect a larger area. The feat would be nearly impossible without an expert explaining the underlying physical principles of weather patterns, but Watercress expected he could complete it anyway. How is the journey going for you otherwise? Basil asked. Watercress smiled. Well enough. I haven't become as bonded to my traveling companions as you have. I constantly correct the map reader along the snow-covered portions of the Merchant Road. Not much has changed in that regard. D3 is kind, and he's brought a morale boost to the front lines. He's even removed a troublesome officer who would not stop bothering me with incessant questions. How is your journey progressing, Basil? Things are great. I'm learning much from my apprentice, which I hadn't anticipated. Mostly patience, among other virtues. I'm realizing just how much I learned from you as well, not just in terms of the material, but how to teach someone else and how to be a mentor. I'm testing and teaching him using techniques that you used to teach me. Does it work for time? Indeed it does, although I do get frustrated having to review the material multiple times for him. I'm glad I learned of my own brain's enchantment before teaching him, otherwise I would have been much more exasperated. I remembered each herb's properties as soon as you taught it to me, whereas he takes 3 or 4 times to remember. You spoiled me. Watercress was uncertain how to respond. Throughout their conversation, Basil's phantom wings had remained in the form of leafy vines with long grass blades emerging from the side of his forearms and calves. Those types of wings signaled healthy growth and happiness. Basil's wings had often looked as such when he had been a young child, and Watercress was pleased to see that his emotional state had improved since the last few times he had seen him. Adopting time seemed to be exactly what Basil had needed. Basil's grown so much. He no longer needs my care. After taking on an apprentice of his own and funding the child's needs with his own earnings, Watercress supposed that his speculations couldn't have been truer. I wanted to apologize to you. Basil looked his master in the eyes as he spoke. I can't believe Basil said that. Watercress's eyebrows rose in shock. For what? For how I reacted in Trelia. I shouldn't have gotten angry with you. At least, not that livid. I do still want to know what it is that you haven't told me, but I've decided I can move past it. Again, teaching time has taught me many things. I'm certain I'm making mistakes, some of which I would be cross about if I were in his place. But forgiveness comes so easily to him, and issues that I once begrudged, I now do not. I'm sorry I've been such a selfish apprentice. I know that you've only ever tried your best to help me. I believe that you are trying to protect me by withholding the information. Watercress was proud of how much his apprentice had matured. He was happy Basil had forgiven him, but he was more pleased that Basil was growing into a fine young man. Watercress cleared his eyes' tear ducts before they misbehaved. Basil's ready. It's time to tell him. But as Watercress nearly did, Vantame came into the spacious tent and stood behind Basil, shaking her head, discouraging him against it. Inaudible to Basil, she said, Let him have a normal life while he can. Is there a ghost behind me? Basil asked, turning to see what his master was looking at. Not exactly, Watercress said, shifting his gaze back to Basil. What, is it a spectre or one of the other ghost forms? An archangel, actually. Watercress couldn't believe he'd told Basil the truth, but he could at least say that much. What are you doing? Vantame demanded. Is it Vantame? Basil's long white strands of wings perked up like cat ears. Vantame paused and shifted back to consider Basil. Yes. How did you know? She blessed Anates. I presume she might still be around. Can you tell her that I'm eternally grateful to her for that? Though you can't hear her, she can hear you. Vantame watched Basil with awe on her face. If angels could weep, Watercress thought she would have. Thank you, Vantame. Basil's eyes searched the tent in vain. Anates was having such a difficult time. You might have given her enough hope to have saved her life. Thank you for blessing her. Vantame reluctantly pulled her gaze from Basil and shifted to Watercress. Would it be all right if I spoke with him in my human form? Watercress shrugged. She was an archangel. He wasn't going to instruct her on what she could and couldn't do. Angel-demon politics were beyond his concern. I suppose I shouldn't. The others wouldn't like it. Why is she here? Basil asked. Is she watching over the crusade party? Yes, the archangels have blessed the crusade. She wishes to aid those who she deems to deserve it, and are otherwise overlooked. Though Anates acted in self-defense when fighting off her attackers, other angels, and archangels, refuse to assist those who have claimed another life for any reason. Fontome disagrees with such philosophies and prefers to help those in complicated and misunderstood situations. I knew there was a reason I liked her, Basil said, smiling. Fontome beamed at him. Basil! Princess Celestine's voice came from outside the tent. Fontome flushed with rage. Wings of pure light condescended to scorched feathers. Does she have to intrude at every opportunity? Just a moment, he called back loudly. Anyway, I just wanted to thank you again, Fontome. If you helped calm the Rhyme Viaduct, thank you for that as well. I didn't expect to speak to an archangel tonight, so I'm not sure what else to say. Goodbye to both of you, Fontome and Master. Goodbye, Basil. We'll talk again soon. Definitely. I'll return soon for the lesson on the weather spell tome, and you have to tell me about Poppy. Of course. Watercress thought it was nice Basil remembered, and you'll have to tell me of Celestine when you have the chance. Basil nodded as he headed out of the tent. Watercress still had a smile when he turned back to a furious Fontome. Why would you encourage him to pursue her? You know who wears her skin. You know she's planning something terrible for him. What about leaving him alone to enjoy a normal life? Watercress asked crossly. There's nothing normal about that situation. Coseir's cheating and everyone knows it. She won't do anything with both of us here, Watercress said. She better not. Eker, the one Gian town the crusade passed through on the way to the capital, was small but intriguing for Watercress, as he had never visited it previously. Is there something I can help you with? Chicory asked when Watercress entered his herb shop. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Watercress. Oh, the famous Master Watercress. It is an honor to meet you formally. I suspect you've guessed I'm Chicory. Eker has greatly benefited from the knowledge you've apprised us of. I am grateful to you. I'm glad the learnings have proven useful. It is a pleasure to meet you as well. I require restocking a few herbs, and I have a question to ask of you. Unfortunately, I may not have everything you're looking for, but feel free to peruse what I have out. Has anyone visited here looking for toxic plants? Perhaps snakeroot or hemlock? Indeed, a man bought my stores of queen's lace a few days ago. He said he needed it to treat a vermin problem. How often are vermin an issue here? Watercress asked. Not often, but he claimed that every town from here to Coserai was out of stock, Chicory said. Watercress speculated whether the customer could be Vahantry. Watercress hadn't discovered the guild's intentions, but he was gravely concerned. Watercress had panicked when Basil's friend Brusite had been brought to him in a poisoned state. He had believed that the group had been under some sort of toxic attack. But even though it was a simple misunderstanding, Watercress made Basil, Brusite, and himself resistant to the plant's toxins anyway. Rewriting the genetic code of all three of them had taken more effort than Watercress would have preferred to expend. Otherwise, he would have inoculated the whole camp. Perhaps penning a tome for that will be a future project. Can you provide me a description of the man? Watercress rubbed his palms together, anxious to solve the mystery and ideally catch the perpetrators before they implemented whatever their plan was. Late 30s, early 40s maybe. Full head of hair and a long beard. Large build. A tad taller than the average man. He was well dressed for the weather, but his furs didn't look expensive. Is that enough to go on? Thank you, Chicory. Is there a problem? The herbalist drew his brows together and frowned. I hope not, but the plants are also mysteriously sold out in every town the crusade visits. Must be a terrible vermin problem they have over there in Ikosu, then. Yes. Watercress decided not to bother the herbalist over the suspected nature of the threat. Chicory didn't need to know he might be complicit in murder. After Watercress had purchased the herbs that Basil had run low on, namely syphilum, now that the contracted courtesans traveled with the other merchants, Watercress wrote letters to his contacts in Yale and Athlia, requesting them to keep an eye out for anyone purchasing the plants. During his time at the Mages' College, he had performed research under Yarrow, who now served in the impenetrable castle, and he had been classmates with Clove, who tended to citizens outside of the Frozen Castle. He wrote to Poppy too, asking if there was a vermin problem in Ikazu. Watercress had full confidence they would take the appropriate cautions given the urgent nature of his letters. Once written and sealed, Watercress requested Master Azimuth to send the messages to their destinations. Slow travel through miserable conditions stretched before Yael. When the crusade crested the ridge and reached the flat, icy plains leading up to the frosted castle, the party collectively sighed, knowing there would be a period of rest awaiting them as the management and administration rates restocked their supplies and the Gian regional army assimilated into the ranks. Permanently frozen trees lined the path, their branches dipped with leaf-laden icicles. The cold immobilized all waterways leading into the city in a solid standstill. No clouds hung in the sky, yet the heat of the suns did not reach the suffering crusaders. Frosted Castle's layer of ice clung to gray stone and formed sharp angles along the roofline. Arches were more pronounced, with spikes hanging down from them. Watercress appreciated the skill of the architectural mages for maintaining floating towers, despite the heavy layers of hoarfrost. The separation between sections greatly increased the castle's security, and likely decreased the need for defensive mages. The only smooth portion of the castle was toward the back, mostly hidden behind the prominent towers. A massive dome covered the cultivation area for the agricultural and alcoholic exports of Gia. Crystal blue icicles sparkled like diamonds, nearly blinding Watercress and the other soldiers in the front lines. The light danced off of the golden armor of the officers, leaving no visual reprieve. The nearer they drew, the more nervous Watercress became. He worried what would become of Clove if his questions aroused suspicions in those who intended to develop a monopoly on Queen's Lace. As with any capital city, Watercress also feared Basil's interactions with other mages. Luckily, Gia didn't have an overabundance of them, but there was still a chance that one would recognize Basil for what he was and say something to him, or to Low King Diaspor. Although, Basil had made it through Ikazu mostly without detection. The most significant risk had been while Basil was dancing at the Festival of the Peacock, but Poppy had silenced his wings before they were too noticeable. What I would give to be with Poppy now. Despite a life of dashed dreams, she had forgiven him and helped his apprentice. He could never rectify what he had put her through, but he would try. First, he had to learn what the poison was to be used for, then he could dedicate his time to think of her. To discover more of the poison, he'd have to visit Clove, but he'd complete the introductions to the Low King before seeking out his friend's office. Most of the crusade set up camp along the outer edge of Yael, using the ice-crusted buildings to block the sweeping winds. Princess Celestine and the major generals led the nobles and mages into the capital city. Once in the castle, the atmosphere shifted dramatically from a freezing environment to a sauna. Watercress immediately shed his outer layers. Low King Diaspor's administrators directed the large group toward the throne room for introductions. They passed an art gallery's worth of family portraits along their route. Watercress glanced around for his apprentice and his grand apprentice. Basil led Time, as Watercress had led Basil. "I'll introduce the three of us," Watercress said after he had introduced himself to Time. Time stared up at Watercress with large questioning eyes. Time's childish freckled face crinkled as he smiled up at him. Watercress returned the expression, yet he was preoccupied with worrying over his own apprentice appearing before foreign mages. "Basil, will you do me a favor?" "What's that?" Basil sounded reluctant to agree outright. "Will you count the number of windows in the throne room when I present us?" Basil's mouth pressed into a hard line, but he nodded. "What should I do?" Time asked brightly. "How about you count the number of people in the throne room who are not part of the crusade? Servants, viziers, and mages." Time clenched his hands into fists, prepared to tackle his assignment. Basil glanced warily toward Watercress, but as he completed the assignment, his phantom wings shortened into discreet nubs. The group marched past numerous doors, past the Low King's fumarium, and through his gardens of extremely rare delicacies. One room had rainforest conditions to cultivate passion fruit, bananas, naseberry, sweet fruit, and coffee plants. Another had a room the perfect pressure and temperature conditions dedicated to rows of specialty grapes. The interior of the castle dripped with opulence. Sculpted gold filled every corner and trailed every edge it could find along the walls, floors, and furniture of the castle. There was a serpentine frivolity to Diaspor's style, and while Watercress could appreciate the masterful craftsmanship, he also acknowledged the waste of the natural resources and funds on the fanciful decorations. Gold accents also lined the length of the throne room and stretched up into the stalactite vaulting. Between the metallic and multifaceted structural elements, looking upward disoriented Watercress. The room's design intentionally kept newcomers' attention on the king rather than drifting around the imperial space. Low King Diaspor reclined casually in his throne, scrutinizing the nobles who presented themselves. His skin hung in long waves as if fleeing his body, and his chins dangled onto his frilled collar. The captive gold of the walls could not escape the fate of his outfit. Golden thread interwove itself through every maroon-colored garment, even his shoes. If Watercress had to guess, the peculiar thread fibers came from the king's crop of sweet fruit. The Low King passed a judgmental gaze over each person but said nothing during the introductions. Even when Watercress presented Basil, Thyme, and himself, King Diaspor did little more than sniff. For Celestine, he said, "Yes, I have matters to discuss with you at your mother's request." His voice sounded as if he permanently sneered. Watercress thought it was likely for the best that the Low King refrained from speaking in general. The last of the presentations were the Major Generals D3 and D4. King Diaspor frowned at them. "I suppose we too have items to discuss. D11 will be waiting in my private council room, if the two of you would like to join us." His low vizier led the high-ranking military officials out of the room. The rest of the administrative assistants handled everyone else. "We were not aware of the exact arrival date for the crusade, so we are not currently prepared to provide room and board to everyone. Our cooks are preparing a welcome feast, but it is not ready yet. Please socialize until we announce the meal. In the meanwhile, we will organize lodging." A vizier attempted to explain the situation, but kept becoming flustered. "That's a shame. I had been looking forward to a bed," Basil said. "We will likely receive one," Watercress said. "Really?" "Certainly. According to D4, contracted mages generally hold the equivalent of an E rank. No one aside from the major generals or above can delegate orders to us. However, we do not wear a uniform. In terms of receiving sleeping accommodations, we have better chances than your friends do, except for Princess Celestine." Basil's mouth fell open in shock. "I could have been bossing around my T-ranking friends this whole time?" "We do not have command authority. It's more of a symbolic honorary gesture." "I doubt they'll know the difference." Basil grinned. Time mirrored his smile. "How come we haven't stayed in any of the lesser towns' manors, then?" Basil asked. "D4 only sanctioned alternative lodging in Trelia because we were there for a longer duration than the other towns. Even he hasn't enjoyed the comforts of the noble manors." "No, just a larger tent." "So have I, and the other mage masters." Basil scowled. His drooping wings echoed the sentiment. Watercress continued. "If you wish to use my tent to see your regular patients, you may. I recognize it is late to be saying so." "Thank you. I appreciate the offer, but I like my current routine." Watercress didn't push the topic. The princess then approached the healing mages. Watercress sensed Cosaire's energy emitting from her skin, but pretended nothing was wrong. As much as he wished to tell Basil of this secret too, it would do nothing but destroy him. Cosaire hadn't harmed Basil, and Watercress would ensure it stayed that way. Cosaire's underlying intentions distressed him, though. She beamed up at Watercress as the tumultuous thoughts tumbled through his head. "What do you think the Low King wishes to speak to you about?" Basil asked. "Possibly economics. Perhaps information regarding border boundaries. I am not certain. Master Watercress, would you possibly mind watching over time for us?" she asked with a honeyed voice laced with bile. "It would be my pleasure to acquaint myself with my grand apprentice," Watercress said. He wondered what corner of the castle she would drag Basil to for some alone time with him. Although, so long as Ventime still had blessings left to bestow, their rendezvous never would just be the two of them. Watercress disliked how Archspawn of ages past manipulated his adolescent apprentice for their own ends. Beside him, Time gazed around everywhere he could look. "I've never been in a real castle before." "How are you liking it?" "I don't know if I am. After visiting 3 castles, I've seen enough for a lifetime. Though there is interesting history ingrained in their walls, often unfortunate politics accompany them too." "You need an empty castle, then." Watercress considered the odd comment. "Yes, I suppose I do. Maybe someday." "I pictured worlds differently. I always thought they would be good people, nice and smart. I don't think this low king is any of those.
Careful, Time. We are in his home. It is fine to voice your opinions outside these walls, but you never know who might be listening. As you grow into adulthood, do not be shocked if illusions fall away before your eyes.
Time didn't need phantom wings for Watercress to know he felt disheartened.
Not all illusions are inherently malicious. You will develop a better understanding of reality through your experiences. Now, did you remember to count the number of people in the room?
I did. There were 7 servants, 4 administrators, 1 mage, and 30 guards based on how everyone was dressed and acted.
What did the mage look like?
Watercress hoped he'd get lucky and run into his friend. She's coming towards us now.
It was not Master Clove, as Watercress had anticipated.
Gia's low healing mage, Master Jasmine, approached Watercress in time. She had close-cropped dark hair with graying streaks of age running through it.
Master Watercress, I presume.
She dipped her head in introduction.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Master Jasmine. I attended a lecture of yours at the Mages College during my studies there.
Watercress returned the honorific gesture.
Given your previous tome publications and consistent outreach to our community, I would have expected you to have given a presentation there too. The rotations have not allowed me to make such a long journey to Ferdin. That would explain this young one. I heard you recently added another to your ranks.
Time smiled and waved as her austere gaze swiveled to him.
You have an uncanny knack of selecting non-sorcerers as your apprentices. Is Vetron having a shortage of magical bursts?
From how Clove had previously described his old master, Watercress speculated that Master Jasmine hadn't intended to insult Time and Basil when she truly wanted to know about the birth rate.
The most recent sorceress was apprenticed under Vetron's low weather mage. I prefer to cultivate talent from scratch, however. I find that sorcerers think they know the best and are much more reluctant to listen.
She considered the words.
Master Clove might take offense to that. I'm certain he would. I am referring to him in addition to others. Perhaps you're right to favor wizards above sorcerers. We all need to have our eyes examined anyway.
Watercress willingly took the bait she dangled before him.
Why? I suppose the whisper emerged during the Crusade's travels. There's been speculation that Ether is not the true Archspawn.
Without missing a beat, Watercress countered.
Ether is the Archspawn. We all observed his wings. Lemniscate's prophecy also said so.
Time scrunched his eyes closed and breathed in a long breath.
The High King reassured everyone of that, but I received word from Master Annis that a few recently unemployed sorcerers have transported to Sithica to look for children that may have phantom wings. I'm grateful Basil's on the crusade then. I would have noticed if I had delivered another spawn. Your sightless apprentice hasn't delivered any on his own. By the time Basil could deliver a child, the timing would have been out of line with the Oracle's wisdom. Besides, I would have noticed if there was another spawn wandering around Sithica. Then I suppose their search will be in vain. It will be. On the topic of your apprentice, I would be intrigued to meet him. He just left.
Watercress was relieved Basil wasn't there for her to inspect his wings up close.
With Princess Celestine, I noticed. People of influence seem attracted to him. I'm curious what his draw is. He's just a sightless wizard, as you pointed out. Aside from Basil, is there anything else you need? I merely wanted to take the opportunity to check whether the rumor was true. I don't know where you heard it from, but it's not. As of the time I departed from Sithica, there was not another spawn residing there aside from aldehyde and ketone. She considered him for a moment. Time stood silently beside Watercress, cautiously observing the exchange between the two masters. Be sure to send Basil over once he's returned, the low healing mage said before she left them. Watercress gave no sign of acquiescence.
Do we like her? Time asked after she left.
I've maintained a written correspondence with her for rotations, but I have yet to form an opinion one way or the other.
Why is she interested in Basil? Is it just because he's friends with Celestine?
Has she guessed the truth? Healing mages are rather uncommon. It is courteous to meet with them when one can, especially if they are visiting one's professional jurisdiction. It can aid in knowledge transfer, herbal dispersion, among other benefits. Additionally, it is considered a rule of etiquette to do so.
Why do you not want her to meet him then? Time asked.
I never said that.
I received that impression.
I am simply protective of my apprentice. If a child such as Time sensed my apprehension, then Jasmine might have as well. Then again, Time was connected to the universe in strange, unique ways, and his perceptions might be augmented. Watercress would make the gamble to have Basil avoid Jasmine if possible. Once the feast commenced, Watercress ate with haste and departed the frozen castle similarly, eager to locate Clove. He left Time in the care of Basil's friends, Brusite and Nanates, so that he could speak to Clove with candor. Watercress had forgotten the freezing conditions waiting for him beyond the gates of the castle's walls. After his bones had just thawed, they screamed at him to remain in the balmy barrier. He shook his head as he donned his coat once more and set out for the healer's shop, looking for the sign that marked it. In a previous letter from Clove during the crusade, his friend had detailed where to find the outpost. As Watercress navigated the jagged street design, he was entirely lost. No street names were marked, but rather storefronts served as the guideposts. However, with a fine layer of frost over the city of Yile, Watercress could barely tell which shop was which. The plumes of smoke erupting from every chimney likewise filled the town with a layer of soft haze. He stopped to ask a couple who tramped hunched over against the wind. They pointed him in a direction, but he found himself disoriented by their instructions, too. The city was the most convoluted, nonsensical design he had ever encountered. Historically, he understood why it was. Yile had been invaded frequently enough that the Gien city employed all efforts to slow an encroaching army. It took Watercress 3 times longer than it should have to reach the frosted wooden shop with the healer's leaf and the holy word for healer, Sutkra, etched into the sign above it. Pulling open the door, he saw Clove by his hearth fire with a quill and parchment in hand. Clove lifted his reading spectacles at Watercress's entry. Watercress, I don't understand how you've done it. I've been penning this tome for 8 rotations, and you start and finish yours in a turn of the moons. You've clearly found a successful method. I suggest you continue with it. Watercress's voice filled with forgotten sarcasm as he approached his friend. Clove rose to smack his friend on the back of the head, as he had in their days at the Mage's College. Great to see you again, Clove said. Although, after 16 rotations, it was difficult to recognize you. Neither of us are the gangly children we were when we graduated. I have to ask you, did you ever manage to summon Hinksuk after all this time? I did not. The gap on my back will forever mock me. I believe he has truly vanished from this world. How is that even possible? Perhaps he ran out of blessings to give. Have you asked any of the other Archspawn about him, or is it rare to see them? Watercress pulled a bench up next to the fire to take a seat. I see them much more often than I'd like. Clove collected his cyan robes as he sat back down. You sound as if it is such a burden to have achieved what others spend their whole lives chasing. Watercress glanced away. It is a burden. What do they come to you for anyway? Clove asked. Bonathrunera. Watercress cast to maintain their privacy. Can I invoke the sacred bond of the 6? Of course, any of us can. Then I do. Watercress sat in the chair across from Clove. Clove waited. No doubt you've heard the rumblings about Ether. Which one? Rumors have spread that he is not the true Archspawn, and that he is attempting to join the crusade. He's joining the crusade. All the monarchs have blocked him, agreeing it was far too dangerous to send the Archspawn away from the impenetrable castle. You aren't shocked by the former speculation. Ether's not the Archspawn. What? My apprentice, Basil, is. Clove's mouth gaped, eyes widened, and he slammed his hands on his thighs. No, Watercress, what are you thinking? I didn't want the High King to have him, so I cared for him and gave him a normal life. How could he have a normal life? Unless you've mastered a method to suppress his wings, you must have locked him in a closet, not to have been recognized all these rotations. It was simpler than anticipated. We lived in a poorer section of Vetron, and the other mages never travel over there. Even Master Annis? Especially my own master. On the crusade route thus far, it has been challenging at times, but not impossible. I can imagine it would be feasible to hide if he keeps his head down. He doesn't know. Clove dunked his head into his hands. After a moment, he looked back up and stared at Watercress. What are you thinking? Watercress asked. You've damned us all. Why? Because he's going to discover he's been lied to his whole life. Because he'll realize someone else received a carefree existence when he had to work to the bone as a wizard. He'll understand in the end. Glad you're making that call single-handedly. You sound like Poppy. Poppy has some sense then. This has the potential to reignite the great wars between the kingdoms. The High King could accuse Low King Citrine or Master Annis of treason for hiding him, even though they knew nothing of it. Did you consider that such a decision might impact more than just yourself? Yes. It still felt it was the right thing to do. This explains why you haven't had a chance to summon Hinksuk. You've been too busy hiding the Arkspawn in plain sight. You've raised him well, at least, taught him everything he might need to protect himself. I've done my best to set him up for success. Have you set him up to make the right decision? I am confident that Basil will do what he feels is right. Clove clicked his tongue. That sounds like a no. Watercress stared at his friend with a haggard expression. What even is the right answer? The one where most people benefit. And could there not be benefit either way? I'm not getting into another religious debate with you. Fine, let's switch subjects then. You promise not to tell a soul, though. I promise, though it will be all of our heads once the lad is discovered. Watercress ignored Clove's pessimism. Has anyone inquired about your stores of Queen's lace? Yes, exactly as you said they would. What did they look like? The same as Chicory described, a large, tall man with lots of hair and mediocre furs. To be fair, many people around here look like that. There wasn't anything else that distinguished him. Not that I can think of. Should there have been? I was curious if you had seen a flaming river brand on the man's body. A member of the Vahantry? By Mlau's horns, Watercress, you might warn a man of your suspicions next time. Watercress summarized his unfortunate experience with the guild members in Sapphi's tavern, where he paralyzed and silenced the Vahantry members who had stalked the crusade and murdered the sergeant major, M8. I suppose Poppy gave you grief for your recklessness for that too. I did not speak to Poppy of that particular incident. For the best. When I decided how to kill them, I was inspired by your specialty. Watercress gave him a wolfish grin. Happy to help. What do you intend to do about the other members? If I can find the man, I'll question him and learn his intentions. Then, kill him and track down the others. Clove stared at him again. What this time? Watercress asked. I remember when you were so idealistic. The cold world finally caught up with you. I haven't changed much. You remember in school, I routinely sacrificed rare beasts in the attempt to conjure their respective arkspawn. Killing people is different than killing animals, even if they are murderous brutes. When beasts possess consciousness, like maras or wyverns, I disagree. It's not different. Watercress folded his arms in front of his chest. We're not getting into a philosophical discussion about this either. There are so few topics we can debate, then. Clove gave him a wary sidelong glance. Better for me not to learn any more of your insanely reckless adventures. I appreciate your help with the poison. I'll send word to Master Yarrow to prepare the castle guard if anyone attempts to buy the plants in bulk. Clove made an incredulous sound. Yarrow? Like he'd do any good. That coward would shower them in it just to make them go away. I'll try asking him anyway. At worst, he ignores my letter. But I have faith he has noble intentions at heart. I'm certain he would alert Athlia's guards to detain and question the man if I requested it. Clove raised an eyebrow skeptically. You'd have better luck reaching out to Master Gentian. The high healing mage has greater concerns elsewhere. Is there anyone else in Athlia? Not that I know of or keep in contact with. I still don't trust Yarrow. I know he's unconventional, but if he were not to be trusted, he wouldn't still be working in the impenetrable castle, now would he? Clove scoffed. Don't be naive. That might be why he is. He's always been jealous of you. If it were me, I would not rely on him. I appreciate your honest counsel. Could I also receive your opinion on Master Jasmine? She wouldn't know about the poisonous plants. She doesn't run her own herb shop. She requested to speak with Basil personally. How concerned should I be? Watercress asked. Did she see his wings? I doubt it, but she is suspicious. It's just because the rumor regarding Ether circled recently. Everyone will forget about it in a few weeks. The crusade will be here for the next few days at a minimum. Will I be successful in putting her off if I avoid arranging a meeting between the two, or will she ensure that it happens? You could be successful, but her doubts will only grow if you are. But they wouldn't be confirmed. I fear she would test him if they do come in contact. She likely would, Clove said. You'd have to give him explicit instructions on how to conceal his wings, but he'd become suspicious himself. He already knows I'm hiding something from him. You should tell him before he works it out himself, or someone else does and tells him. I'm just hoping that the rumors quiet down and we can all move past it. You are the most logical man I've ever met, Watercress, in all but 2 areas, which are Poppy and your apprentice. I'll tell him when it feels right to do so. Your sentimental gut may damn all of us in the end. Or save us. Clove relaxed in his chair. You think so? Watercress mirrored him and reclined in his own chair with a wry smile. The heat of the flames irritated his eyes as they teared up at the idea of his apprentice's eventual end. I can only hope Basil will make the right choice when it's time. Watercress knocked on the door in front of him after he was certain no one else was there. The Ikashuish princess cracked the slab of wood, then opened it wider when she identified him. What can I do for you, Master Watercress? Can you get Basil out of the castle as much as possible? She batted her eyelashes innocently. Why ever should I do that? He could catch a chill. Because, Sire, Master Jasmine suspects something is wrong, and it could jeopardize his safety. We wouldn't want that. An evil look crossed the princess's beautiful face. But I can raise you one better for a price. Oh? You are intimately aware of my brand of curse magic. I can have Basil meet the master without her ever seeing his wings, regardless of whatever test she conducts. No matter how furious or passionate he feels, she'll vouch for herself that he's not a spawn. Your price? Watercress asked warily. Slaying the last raven basilisk colony in Verdun. Watercress was taken aback by her request. She would have me eliminate her legendary beast? So that you can no longer be summoned. Precisely. I've grown tired of sharing my ability with others. I have no doubt Vantame is there now, tracking down my summoning spell. As you can imagine, it might be rather shocking for Basil if I'm speaking with him one moment, then vanish another. You'd come up with some excuse about a transportation mage's non-consensual displacement after you clawed your way back. I'm not making this trade. I don't have time for it, and it's far too dangerous for what you're asking. Suit yourself. I suppose you could create the illusion anyway. I can't. I'll have to prevent the meeting between Basil and Jasmine from occurring. Thank you anyway, Coserai. It's Celestine for now. What's your intention for him? The same as yours. I want to ensure Basil makes the best choice. Celestine closed her room's door in the master's face.